Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
All right, let's talk about a debate that comes up often in networking. And the debate is simply the difference between or comparing quantity of people in your network versus quality of people in your network. And I have covered this topic a few times on this podcast, and looking back over the, 500 some odd episodes. I'm not exactly sure what this episode number is or will be numbered at this point in time sitting here recording it. But I know I recorded podcast 180, which was the LinkedIn debate, quality versus quantity, and I really talked about it from a LinkedIn perspective, and actually re-released that episode on April 8th, 2022. And then I did another episode entitled Metcalfe's Law, which was released on November 2nd of 2021, and that really talked about how you need quantity within your network to really bring value to it. And Metcalfe's Law is really a theory on the value of, telecommunications or a network. Imagine if you have the one and only fax machine out there. Well, there's not much use to one and only fax machine, having only one fax machine. But as soon as you have the second fax machine, the value of having the first goes up. Maybe not substantially. It's only one-way communication between 2 points. But when you start adding more fax machines out there, for those who know what fax machines are, the value of fax machines went up and up and up. And obviously that all went away with the internet. Few people have fax machines anymore. There are fax numbers and there are scanning, it's mainly scanning, and the numbers are just kind of a throwback, but most people are just using the internet. Anyhow, I digress. And then I released episode 192, which was entitled How Many Hours, and that went out on July 14th of 2020. And I've shared these numbers and dates, so if you want to go back, I don't know how you get your podcast, but if you want to go back and you can find those episodes and listen to them. But in that particular episode, I talked about how many hours you need to have with someone, interact with someone to really turn them into a good relationship. And that was actually based on an article that I had gotten from Adam Connors, who's another networking guru out there who has his own podcast. Today I'm going to take a little different angle on this, and again we're going to talk about quantity versus quality and what is more important. Is it important to have lots of people in your network, or is it important to have great people in your network? Quality versus quantity. What rules? Quantity or quality? I was at a particular chapter meeting and I was talking about just in the AmSpirit Business Connections sense that often people overthink who they're going to invite to chapter meetings. They'll go through this, what I'll call cerebral gymnastics of, well, what category should I invite? Okay, realtors, who do I know? How do I best invite them? Should I text them? Should I email? Then they have this conversation with themselves about everybody. Would they be annoyed? Would they be put off by me inviting them, or would they be happy? What's the best way to do that? And then they get to the end of this little mental session with themselves and they're exhausted. And they've run out of time and they've run out of energy to actually invite somebody. And so all this thinking on trying to find somebody prevents them from inviting anybody. And what I have been an advocate of in the AmSpirit Business Connections world is just invite anybody. Invite anybody to your chapter. Let people know about it. Even if they're not a perfect person, bring them into the chapter setting and have them meet other people. So anyhow, I was sharing this with a particular chapter, And one of the members said, "Oh, that reminds me of something I read in the book Atomic Habits." Actually, he originally thought it was the book Made to Stick. This particular person reads a lot, and I get it. You read a lot, and you're kind of like, okay, where did I get that from? And there can be some overlap. And he originally said Made to Stick, and I have that book, and we both tried to find it and couldn't find it, and then we did a search, and we found it was actually in the book Atomic Habits. So I did some research on this, and I'll kind of go into the study that was done. And the study is true, but it is well. Let me just kind of go into it and share. What I'm about to share is true, but it's come in a couple of different forms. But at any rate, there was a ceramics teacher that announced on the opening day of class that he was dividing the class into two groups. Half the class, let's say the left hand of the class or left hand of the studio, would be graded solely on the quantity of work they produced. And then the people on the other side of the class, the right side of the class, would be measured on the quality. And the procedure that he set forth was relatively simple. On the final day of class, he was going to bring his bathroom scale in and weigh the work of the quantity group. If you had 50 pounds of pots, clay pots, you got an A. If it was north of 40 but less than 50, you got a B, and so on. But those who were graded on quality needed to produce only one pot, one perfect pot to get an A. Well, the semester went on, and when it came to grading time, to me it would be simple. I would just be making pots like crazy. I would get an A. I'd love to be in the quantity group. The quality group, I don't know. At any rate, I digress again. When it came time to grading, something interesting became very evident. The highest quality work were produced by the group that were graded on quantity. It seemed what was happening is the quantity group was churning out piles of work, but they were learning from their mistakes. They were getting better at it. They were not just making pots to make pots, but they were, trying to improve with every iteration. Whereas the quality group sat and theorized about how to make this so-called perfect pot. And in theorizing, they didn't get as much practice. They were thinking about it and, okay, how do I do it? Designing the pot before they went to the, whatever those turntables are called. And they really ended up with not a lot of anything in the end. So bringing this back to networking and, back to, well, first I'll start with the AmSpirit Business Connections world. I'm an advocate of people just inviting individuals to meetings. Don't worry if they fit or not. They'll figure that out. That's up for them to figure out. But you want to bring people through the door for a couple of reasons. Everybody who comes through the door is certainly a potential person for the chapter. Everybody who comes through the door is certainly a potential referral partner for somebody in the meeting. So let's say you already have a realtor in your chapter, but you bring in another realtor just to see what it's about. That realtor is going to have the opportunity to meet the mortgage lender, the contractor is going to have the opportunity to meet the attorney, and can be giving and getting referrals. So it benefits people in the chapter to have that person visit. It might even benefit the realtor, arguably, because they can develop a relationship and be in communication with one another and say, hey, I've got a cute little ranch condo thing for sale. Do you have any clients? And because they have a relationship with one another, they know each other, like each other, trust each other, they're going to be on one another's radars that much more. So that's the second benefit. The third benefit is everybody coming through the door might be a candidate for the chapter, might not be. They certainly are a referral partner, but they also could be a potential client for people sitting around the room. And so, they're coming in and they're getting to meet the property casualty person who just happens to be talking about um, special insurance out there for people who drive Ubers, or special insurance for people who've got teenage drivers. And that particular person visiting is like, oh, I have a teenage driver, or, that describes my neighbor. I need to connect with my neighbor. And all of a sudden, the property casualty person's got a decent referral out of it. Or that person visiting who really has no business being in the chapter, is really not a great referral partner for anybody and really doesn't need the services of anybody in the chapter, comes in and just realizes that, this isn't for me, but I have a friend that it's perfect for. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's somebody they know from school, maybe it's somebody who's left where they work, start their own business. So I'm a big advocate of just bringing people through, And of the people coming through, the ones who are potential candidates, you can certainly vet them, be very liberal with respect to inviting people and very picky with respect to who you actually invite to membership. And that should be the game plan. Don't worry about who you're inviting. Don't waste energy about who you're going to invite. Just invite people. And then sort it out from there. It'll sort itself out. What ends up happening a lot of times in our groups, maybe many groups, is that people are not, they're very picky about who they invite. They're trying to make a perfect pot, if you will. And what they end up doing is not being very good at making pots or inviting people, I guess is my metaphor, extending my metaphor. They're not very good at inviting people. And so they end up doing a horrible job inviting that person who could be for the chapter, if inviting anybody at all. Now, extending this to broader networking, again, I think you want to have quality people in your network. I don't think there's any debate about that. I've talked about I did a couple episodes on Dunbar's number, which basically just talks to the notion that we can only have so many people so many relationships operating in our teeny brains. Number's about 150 relationships, and that number holds steady even though we're using social media now. We have a lot of, I've got 20,000 connections on LinkedIn. I don't have 20,000 relationships out there. I've got about 150 people that I have a decent relationship with, and I need to be very selective about who those 150 people are. And that gets very complicated, but I need to be very selective about that. But to get to those 150 people, and actually maybe improve upon those 150 people, I need to have a lot of quality. I need to have conversations with people, and I do turn down meetings with people. I'm not a big fan of driving halfway across town for a cup of coffee or just having a meeting to get pitched. But I try to be very open to the notion of meeting people, because you never ever know where meeting with people leads to something. And I have shared stories in the past on this podcast where I have connected with people where it doesn't seem to make any sense at all, and it turns into being a great opportunity. And I've had situations where it's like, wow, this is going to be a game changer, and it ends up being anything but. So to summarize this this conversation here, this episode, as you get out there, network. Talk to lots of people. Don't sit there and try and theorize on who are the best people. I can only have 2 great conversations this week, or I need to, build 5 great people into my world this year. And I'm just going to sit and I'm going to ponder who those people are, and I'll figure out who they are. That is probably not going to work. You might get lucky, but chances are it's not going to work. But in following this quantity leads to quality parable, just have conversations with people. Let people who you know who you're looking for. Chances are, if somebody's not perfect for you, you're not perfect for them. But there's nothing wrong with being introduced to one another and being able to say, you know what, here's a better person for you. I have these conversations all the time. I have conversations with people. It's like, yeah, I can't see a whole lot of future in us continuing to really build a relationship, but I've got 2 or 3 names that I think will be perfect for you. And you talk to them about it, and like, yeah, that would be really cool to have those conversations, to have those, have those introductions, so I can start down that path. So as you build towards a quality network, have a quantity of interactions with people, because that quantity will ultimately lead to the quantity or the quality that you want.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.